On the silent blue planet, spiritual energy suddenly emerged, triggering a wave of evolution that gave rise to terrifying monsters. Among these beasts, a Pengu monster that devastated Tianhai City. In response, humanity fought back using traditional weapons, but the military's efforts were futile as their firepower proved ineffective. The awakened individuals who had gained supernatural abilities to combat the monstrous threat. This marked the beginning of the era of renewal. At Tianhai City's first high school, where students gathered for the awakening ceremony. This event was critical for every 18-year-old, as it determined whether they would gain extraordinary powers and secure their future. Among the students, some expressed their nervousness, fearing failure despite the previous year's 92% success rate. Amidst the nervous crowd, our boy Lin stood out. Confident and determined, he clutched a pendant from his father, declaring to himself that today he would awaken an extraordinary ability and shock everyone. As the line moved forward, he knew his turn was approaching. The awakening ceremony begins with great excitement as Zhao Wu awakens an impressive Orang fire ability. Earning admiration from his peers, confident and determined, he introduces himself with his class and exam details. However, whispers and murmurs begin to rise. Lin is immediately recognized as the title that brings scorn and mockery from others. 7 years ago, he was celebrated as the son of a hero when his father was a respected man. But everything changed when the Pengu monster attacked Tianhai City. Lin's father was accused of abandoning the battlefield, causing massive casualties, and was labeled a traitor. From that moment, Lin's life turned upside down. His family was shunned, and he was left with nothing but shame and isolation. Returning to the present, Lin stands before the awakening platform, determined to prove himself. He places his hand on the awakening screen, hoping for a miracle that will redeem his family name. Stunned when the system declares he has no ability, the room erupts with laughter and students mock him, calling him the traitor's son. Crushed, Lin returns to his classroom, only to find his belongings destroyed and hateful messages scrawled everywhere. Among the bullies is Chen, who proudly wears Lin seeing it. Lin's shock turns to rage as he demands its return. Lin, furious at Chen for wearing his father's medal, with a cruel smirk, Chen overpowers Lin, throwing him to the ground while insulting him as a waste born from a traitor. Lin shouts back, reminding Chen of their father's shared history. But Chen coldly declares Lin's father a disgrace who abandoned his duty. Chen snatches Lin pendant, mocking it as a useless keepsake left by his pathetic father, and raged Lin lunges to take it back. But Chen threatens to crush it, sneering at Lin's weakness. Lin, fueled by desperation, grabs the pendant with unexpected strength, surprising Chen. However, Chen quickly overpowers him again, revealing his newly awakened a rank power surge ability, leaving Lin completely helpless. In a flashback, Lin lies in bed, where his father wears the pendant to Lin, clutching the pendant as he reflects on the day's humiliation. After he recognizes his father's pendant in Chen's possession, desperate to reclaim it, Lin fights back as he bites and struggles with Chen. Chen mocks Lin for his inability to awaken powers and threatens to destroy the pendant. Cornered and defiant, swallows the pendant, vowing not to let Chen take it. A system appears before him, the monster overload system. The system congratulates Jin for successfully binding with the monster overlord system. Confused but intrigued, wonders what a personal monster entails. Suddenly, 4 striking options appear before him. The first is the Monster King, a legendary creature that possesses both aquatic and terrestrial abilities, capable of emitting piercing thunder and radiant light. Next is the Monster Tyrant, a fearsome 3-headed monster with unparalleled destructive power and wings that cover the sky. The third option, Monster Queen, is a colossal bee-like creature renowned for her supportive abilities and command over the natural world. Finally, the star-breaking Savage Ape is revealed, a beast of raw capable of wielding devastating force. He is stunned by choices, realizing that these creatures hail from the ancient Pengu era. The system explains that the monster will be in its infancy, requiring Jin's cultivation to grow into its full, terrifying form. Grinning with excitement, he recognizes the immense power at his disposal. As he fantasizes about becoming unbeatable, he recalls the monstrous Shulong that once destroyed Tianhai City, further igniting his standing before the monster overlord system. Faces a countdown. He has just 1 minute to select a monster. Panicked, he examines the 4 options. Conflicted, he sedates unsure which suits him best. Suddenly, his attention locks onto Kailong, the thunder-wielding Monster King. Realizing its connection to his father's thunder abilities, he chooses Kailong with confidence, determined to prove himself. The moment he confirms, a swirling vortex of water surrounds him, pulling him into a chaotic current. Jin is left shocked. He feels an overwhelming pressure and comes face to face with Kailong. The monster's immense presence and power are undeniable, leaving Jin in awe. The energy shifts as he is lifted onto Kailong's back, as the thunderous roar of the legendary Pangu monster. Jin encounters the bullies again, who mock him, assuming he's lost his mind. A system notification reveals he possesses a Monster King egg, leaving him confused but determined. The bullies try to humiliate him by stripping him, but a girl intervenes. Identifying herself as the student council president, she warns the bullies to stop, demonstrating her power by making a pen fly to the leader's throat. The bully leader boasts about his rank ability and tries to intimidate her, but Jin insults them for their cowardice. Angered, the bully punches Jin, but the girl activates her power. Realizing her strength, the leader recalls her name, Nina, and hesitates, despite threatening her with his father's authority. Nina intensifies her attack, sending a metal shard to the leader's throat, leaving him bleeding and shaken. Nina calmly tells the bully leader that anyone unable to control their awakened powers can't press charges if harmed in a fight they started. After swiftly defeating the bullies in 3 minutes, the leader admits defeat, realizing even his general father can't save him. Nina confidently takes the metal shard from him, demands his notebook, and orders him to meet her in her office the next day. Jin, impressed by Nina's effortless victory, admires her abilities. Afterward, Nina removes the viper pinning Jin to the wall, causing him to fall and accidentally reveal his banana print underwear. Embarrassed, Nina looks away while Jin awkwardly thanks her and hands her the metal shard. Nina, slightly flustered, advises him not to bring such things to school and gives him one final warning. Non-awakened individuals like him shouldn't get involved with the awakened due to the significant power gap. Jin, reflecting on her advice, realizes he can't compete with the awakened yet but resolves to grow stronger. He believes that with his father's pendant, he will one day control powerful monsters and prove his worth. The scene shifts to the bullies cleaning the classroom, grumbling about their punishment. The leader silences them, vowing to avoid Nina. Meanwhile, Jin researches the Back-Eye Monster King and discovers little information but senses its immense hidden powers. Determined, he resolves to hatch the egg soon. Just then, the system appears and an irritated Jin demands to know where it has been all afternoon. The system explains to Jin that it draws energy from personal monsters, but since his monster is still in its egg, it can only appear under critical conditions. It urges Jin to hatch the egg quickly. Jin expresses concern, unsure how to proceed. The system reassures him that this is normal since monsters have lifespans of billions of years, far exceeding humans. Without intervention, it could take millions of years for the egg to hatch. Shocked, Jin asks what he should do. The system explains that the process can be accelerated using a monster core, specifically the white-tail maltite, which contains spiritual energy capable of speeding up incubation. When Jin inquires where to find it, the system reveals the core is already present in Jin's home. Excited, Jin wonders if his mother left hidden treasures for him. The system confirms that the mandem metal Jin possesses contains immense spiritual energy capable of expediting the process. Jin is surprised and conflicted, realizing this metal is linked to his father. Memories of being called the son of a traitor flood back, along with his promise to prove his father's innocence. Despite his attachment, Jin decides to use the metal to hatch the egg. Knowing he isn't strong enough to protect it yet, Jin asks the system for instructions, and it explains he must perform a specific, by now op-metallizing ritual by drawing an odd pattern on the wall. Jin criticizes the crude design, likening it to a child's drawing, but follows through, placing the metal in the designated spot to begin the process. The ritual leads to a massive explosion, breaking the wall and revealing the monster. It looks small and cute yet radiates immense power. Jin, astonished, asks if this is the legendary monster. The system confirms it's in its juvenile stage and needs to evolve. Surprised, Jin complains that the monster looks what the system described. In response, the system grants him a temporary skill to tame it, explaining that it only works on monsters with a lower level than Jin's. Relieved, Jin jokes that the system should have mentioned this earlier. Meanwhile, the monster playfully bites at Jin's pants before starting to eat its eggshell, surprising Jin. He recalls that reptiles consume eggshells for calcium and encourages it to eat as much as it wants. After devouring a large portion, the shell gets stuck in its throat. The system reports that the monster earns 5 evolution points as it absorbs the nutrients, rapidly evolving. Jin, stunned by its growth, learns that its skill, absorption, allows it to gain evolution points from what it consumes. Jin realizes the monster could make him incredibly powerful. Just then, his mother walks in, sees the creature, and screams in fear. Jin tries to calm her, jokingly introducing the monster as his hot friend. But the creature frightens her even more, causing her to faint. Panicked, Jin asks the system to store the monster, but it explains that it can't store living creatures at the moment. As he plans his escape, the monster instinctively crashes through the window, breaking the wall and attracting a crowd. Thinking fast, Jin wraps the monster in clothes to conceal it and sneaks away to a hiding spot. Once safe, Jin wonders if the monster can grow by consuming anything. The system explains that high spiritual energy items will accelerate its growth, but notes that Jin cannot communicate with the monster yet, though this will improve as it evolves. The system grants Jin a new skill, Monster Radar, to detect spiritual energy nearby. Using it, Jin notices several small red dots and a large one, indicating a powerful source. Excited, he explains the discovery to the monster and sneaks toward it, proud of his clever concealment plan. They arrive at a secured building, and the monster scales it like a spider, carrying them to a balcony. Inside, Jin realizes they've entered a girl's room. He jokes to himself about how bad it would look if people thought the son of a traitor snuck into a girl's room. The monster, drawn to spiritual energy, finds an emblem of an elite hunter. Jin reflects on the mystic realm, a dimension abundant in spiritual energy, rare monsters, and treasures, tightly controlled by governments. Hunters who pass rigorous exams can enter and unique abilities. Jin recognizes the emblem as a hunter's, representing someone with access to this realm. Things turn chaotic as the monster misinterprets its surroundings and starts treating objects as food. Jin frantically explains they're not here for food but something more important. Just as trouble brews, the girl, Nina, hears the commotion and begins investigating. Jin and the monster leap out of the room to avoid being caught but find themselves and they arrive at a second location. And Jin realizes the insignia they found earlier could grant them access to the mystic realm. Entering the mystic realm, they are awestruck by its beauty and the variety of creatures. Jin turns and sees a massive bear monster standing behind them. Startled, Jin pleads with the system for a solution. The system reassures him, stating that the bear is just an oversized ordinary animal and not dangerous. As the bear lunges at him, Jin panics, but the dragon suddenly emerges, knocking the bear down with its tail and breaking its neck. Jin uses the radar to locate a larger energy source. Excited, he leads the dragon to a new location, only to encounter a pack of mutated dogs. They turn their focus on Jin, biting the dragon's tail to distract it. Jin realizes they're targeting him directly and vows to protect himself. He directs the dragon to it and climbs a branch, forming a plan. As the dogs attack the tree, Jin loses his grip and falls. In desperation, he commands the system to use all his evolution points. When the dogs attack, Jin punches one with immense strength, instantly taking it down. Shocked by his power, he realizes his dragon's evolution has transferred 30% of its strength to him. Contemplating this new ability, Jin recognizes it as a turning point in his journey, resolving to harness this power to prove himself and dominate the challenges ahead. A flashback scene begins where he desperately calls out to the system, asking it to use all of his evolution points. The system responds, congratulating Jin and informing him that his dragon has reached its grown stage, gaining 4 centimeters in height and now weighing a hefty 3.5 tons. Jin, eager for more power, demands his mission to reward, and the system grants him the ability projection skill as a reward. The system then hands Jin a tool that resembles a torch and explains how to use it. To access the dragon's ability, Jin needs to bring the tube close to his eye, select the monster's ability he wants, and then inject it into his body. Following the instructions, Jin uses the tool and successfully gains 30% of the dragon's abilities. At that moment, a monster attacks Jin, but with his newly gained strength, he lifts a nearby tree and smashes it into the creature. Before he can react, more mutated dogs charge at him. Jin grabs another tree and rolls it toward them, but the dogs swiftly dodge the attack, leaving Jin momentarily shocked. Just then, the dragon arrives and devours the entire pack of dogs in one swift move, providing Jin with a surge of evolution points once again. Jin, observing the dragon's growth is by how much bigger and stronger it has become in such a short time. He realizes that if this is just a fraction of the dragon's potential, it is destined to grow into an incredibly powerful creature. Jin proudly tells the dragon that he kept his promise to provide plenty of monsters to feast on, pointing out how many they've encountered. The dragon, satisfied, approaches Jin and lifts him onto its shoulder. Suddenly, Jin hears a voice asking why he didn't follow orders and who gave him permission to come here. Jin is confused, wondering who's speaking, only to realize that it's the dragon talking to him. The dragon warns Jin that staying close is necessary, as being apart could be dangerous for him. Jin is shocked, but the system reassures him that there's nothing unusual about this. Dragon, having ruled the planet for billions of years, possess high intelligence. This is no ordinary creature. The dragon advises Jin that he's still too weak to take unnecessary risks, though Jin points out how the dragon earlier sent him to fight the bear alone. The dragon responds that now it is stronger and can handle things. Jin, wanting to show his own strength, insists that he is strong too and that the dragon shouldn't worry. However, Jin decides it's time to head home, but realizes they'll need the insignia to leave the mystic realm. Upon searching, they discover it's missing. Jin urges the dragon to help find the insignia quickly, as they won't be able to exit the realm without it. After searching the entire area and coming up empty-handed, the dragon picks up a scent and mentions smelling dogs. Jin dismisses this as a joke, saying it's impossible for dogs to collect shiny objects, a trait more associated with birds like crows. Suddenly, Jin's nose becomes more sensitive and he catches a familiar scent, Nina's. They follow the scent trail and come across a hole, where Jin suspects the insignia might be. However, they are met by a group of small mutated dogs. The dogs attack the dragon, but the dragon easily brushes them off and prepares to eat them. Jin stops, saying he wants to try out a new skill instead. We then flash back 45 minutes earlier, where Nina is outside, wondering how anyone could climb to the 45th floor and then leave safely. She speculates that it must have been someone with enhanced physical abilities due to their awakened powers. She also notices a large hole in the ground, puzzled by how any human could have created such a thing. Suddenly, she spots a piece of clothing with a banana print, instantly recognizing it as belonging to Jin. This reminds her of earlier in the day, when she sensed something large, possibly a monster, but instead found Jin in the bullies. She had checked everyone's abilities, but hadn't found anything unusual at the time. Nina reflects on the earlier events and thinks about how none of the bullies had particularly strong abilities, and Jin, being unawakened, shouldn't have had any hidden powers. Yet she feels there's something he's hiding, as the awakening device doesn't usually make mistakes. She wonders if Jin has a hidden ability, but if he did, why didn't he use it when fighting the bullies? One thing seems certain, Jin has some ability related to controlling monsters. Puzzled, Nina questions why Jin would come to her house so late at night, and how he even knew where she lived. Just then, her phone buzzes with a notification about a code red being issued in the E-grade Mystic Realm. Meanwhile, Jin tells the dragon not to kill the small mutated dogs because he wants to test his ability on them. Besides, according to the radar, these dogs aren't strong enough to give him significant evolution points. Jin explains that his taming skill should work as long as the dragon's level is higher than the monster's. As Jin attempts to tame the dogs, they attack him, refusing to stop. Jin is left to handle the situation on his own. Jin touches one of the dogs under its neck, successfully taming it. The dog then starts barking at the others, and soon Jin manages to tame all the small mutated dogs. The dogs, now friendly, begin playing with Jin. The system notifies him that he can tame up to 5 monsters at once, and since he has already tamed 4, he only has 1 slot left. Annoyed, Jin complains that he wasted several slots on weaker monsters. The system gives Jin a new mission to find a monster core, which will allow him to upgrade the system to level 2. This upgrade will enhance not only his taming skill, but all of his other abilities as well. Jin, with a slightly sarcastic expression, remarks that obtaining a monster core is no easy task. After all, he had to sacrifice his father's metal to bring the dragon to life, so finding another core seems like an impossible challenge. Jin then remembers that they need to return Nina's insignia without her realizing they took it. He grabs one of the dogs, calling it a good boy, and asks it to return the insignia. The dog jumps up, and the insignia falls open, revealing a photo of Jin's father inside. Jin is stunned and wonders why his father's photo is inside Nina's insignia. He begins to question if he is getting closer to solving the mystery of his father's disappearance. Just then, his phone rings and Nina angrily yells, accusing him of sneaking into her house and stealing her mother's insignia. It becomes clear that the insignia belongs to Nina's mother, not Nina herself, which adds another layer of intrigue to the mystery. Nina also informs Jin that a red alert has been issued in the E grade because a 2-ton monster was spotted there 10 minutes ago. Jin is shocked as the monsters in the E grade realm are only supposed to weigh around 1 ton. Realization dawns on him, and he looks at his dragon, understanding that the 2-ton monster is none other than his own dragon. Now, Jin realizes they are in serious trouble. Internally, Jin reflects on how he only came to the mystic realm to upgrade his dragon, but he had overlooked how tight the realm's security is and how monitored it is. He now understands that his mission to uncover the mysteries surrounding Nina and his father has led him into a much more complicated situation than he anticipated. Jin quickly realizes that they need to escape the mystic realm before they are caught by the security team. Using his monster radar, he sees the approaching their location. The dragon, however, thinks only of food, imagining the security team as his next meal. Frustrated, Jin punches the dragon and scolds him for always thinking about eating. Just then, one of the small dogs signals something, and the dragon translates saying there are large pits ahead where they can hide. Jin, curious, asks the system if hiding in one of the large pits will help conceal their presence from the security team. The system responds that while it isn't certain, the small mutated dogs had hidden in similar pits before, and they weren't detected. Jin reflects on how taming these dogs was initially just a test of his skills, but now they've proven to be quite useful. They move toward the large pit, where the dragon suggests that Jin stay outside while he and the small dogs go deeper. Jin, worried about the dragon's presence still being detectable, joins them despite the dragon's protests. As Jin enters, the dragon catches him before he falls, frustrated that Jin didn't listen to his warning. Jin explains that he was concerned the dragon's aura could still be detected from outside, so he came to warn them to go deeper. As they venture deeper into the pit, the dragon notices markings on the walls and comments that no small monster could created such a large pit. It becomes clear that there may be a much bigger monster lurking here. Although the E-grade mystic realm isn't supposed to house such large creatures, something feels off. The dragon then smells something unusual and runs ahead, discovering a pile of bones from various monsters. Jin is terrified by the sight, but the dragon, true to form, only sees them as food. Suddenly, the ground starts to shake, and a massive monster emerges from the pile of bones. This creature towering over them is much larger than Jin's dragon, which looks tiny in comparison. Like a dog next to an elephant. Its size and power resemble that of a raw rice titan. As if things couldn't get worse, the leader of the mutated dogs and its pack also fall into the pit, growling at Jin and the dragon. Jin wonders if they think he and the dragon are responsible for into the pit. Before anyone can act, the gigantic monster devours all the mutated dogs in a single bite, shocking Jin. He realizes that a group of monsters they had struggled with was wiped out in mere seconds by this colossal beast. Panic sets in as Jin wonders how they could possibly defeat something so powerful. The monster then attacks Jin, but the dragon intervenes, attempting to block the attack. However, the beast is too strong, and the dragon struggles to hold it off. At that moment, the dragon turns toward Jin and speaks in a strange language that Jin can't understand. Surprisingly, the small dogs respond in the same language, communicating with the dragon. Jin, confused, realizes that the dragon is somehow communicating with the smaller mutated dogs, leaving him puzzled and even more concerned about their situation. As the small dogs try to pull Jin away, the massive monster launches an attack, forcing Jin to run for his life. However, the monster's speed is overwhelming, and Jin barely manages to escape by diving into a smaller hole, where the monster's head for a moment. Jin thinks he's safe, but the monster starts digging through the hole with its mouth, leaving Jin to believe his end is near. The dragon attempts to bite and attack the monster, but all of its efforts prove as the creature is too strong for even the dragon's most powerful attacks. Jin realizes that all the tactics that had worked on previous monsters are ineffective here. He remembers monsters from games and concludes that the weak point of this beast must be its belly, which is close to the ground, but he needs to communicate this plan to the dragon somehow. Just as he's thinking this, the system announces that a new day has begun and Jin has received his sign in reward, a powerful laser breath attack for the dragon. This ultimate attack can channel all the dragon's energy into a single devastating blast, but it requires time to prepare. Time they don't seem to have in this dangerous situation. An idea strikes Jin, since he can also use 30% of the dragon's ability. He asks if the ability cooldown has reset. The system confirms that it has. Jin quickly devises a plan. He will distract the monster with his dragon's abilities while the dragon prepares the laser breath attack. Jin explains the plan to the small mutated dogs, and they all spring into action. In the next scene, the dragon bites the monster's nose to distract it. But the monster retaliates by tossing the dragon aside. Two of the small dogs attack the monster's ears to inform the dragon about the laser breath and how the plan is supposed to work. However, the irritated monster turns its focus on the dragon preparing to strike. Just as the monster is about to land a blow, Jin tries to help by throwing a massive boulder from above. Unfortunately, in true Jin fashion, his aim is off and the boulder hits the dragon instead, knocking it unconscious. The monster then turns its attention back to Jin, who stands there. Knowing he must fight, he tries to rally his courage, reminding himself that he came to the mystic realm not to hide, but to overcome his fears. But the reality of the situation is daunting, as even the dragon's powerful attacks had failed to stop this monster. The monster moves closer to Jin, who sits frozen in fear, feeling the weight of his own vulnerability. As the creature looms over him, Jin desperately yells for the beady laser to be fired, but there is no response from the dragon. The monster assumes Jin is merely trying to distract it and continues advancing. Jin, however, taunts the creature, hinting that it's not the only one capable of creating traps. Just as the monster steps closer, a huge explosion erupts from below, sending the beast flying out of the pit. At that moment, we see the security forces observing the large creature through binoculars. One of the soldiers reports that a massive 8 to 10 meter monster was spotted in there, possibly the very creature they've been searching for. The captain orders the team to head toward the location. Ready to investigate, Jin reflects on the laser attack that was supposed to be the most powerful in human history, but feels like a clown for thinking it would work. Thankfully, the small dog had saved him in time. As we see Jin's plan unfold, he intentionally hits his dragon to grab the monster's attention, distracting it so that it can attack from below. The dragon laments that Jin didn't get to witness its attack, to which Jin replies that seeing the massive 5-ton monster had left him stunned and unable to think clearly. Suddenly, the system notifies Jin that he's earned more evolution points. Jin, noticing the dragon eating again, angrily scolds him, reminding they are still trapped in a large pit, and the security forces are on their way. As Jin tries to leave the pit, he slips and falls back in, only to notice a small monster core lying nearby. He asks the system if it's a real core, and the system confirms it's a fragment from the previous monster, enough to upgrade the system to level 2. Just as Jin approaches the core, the dragon moves to eat it. Jin panics and yells that core isn't food, ordering the system to quickly use it before the dragon swallows it. The system instructs Jin to place the core on a panel, and as soon as he does, the system absorbs it and upgrades to level 2. The system then rewards Jin with monster space, and a backpack appears on his back. Jin is unimpressed by its appearance, calling it ugly, but the system tells him not to judge by its looks and to explore inside. Jin and the dragon enter the space, which is much larger than it appears from the outside, providing a new home for the dragon. The system explains that Jin can store anything inside this space without its presence being detected, and even though the backpack is small, it can hold an entire dimension's worth of items. Jin stores the dragon inside the backpack and exits the pit. As Jin exits, he spots a large monster core inside. The system explains that this particular monster had an abnormal existence, and its core was deliberately placed there by someone using it to enhance their own abilities. The system further mentions that this was a practice from ancient times. At that moment, the dragon emerges from the backpack, commenting on how humans, monkey-like creatures, are always using other beings to further their own strength. Jin, irritated, punches the dragon and shoves him back into the bag, reminding him not to come out without permission. Just then, the system's alarm goes off, warning Jin that the security forces are rapidly approaching. Jin, determined not to leave without the monster core, uses all his strength to try to extract it from the massive beast. However, the core remains stuck, refusing to budge. Just as the security forces arrive on the scene, Jin manages to pull the core free. He glances back at the approaching forces, relieved that he was able to retrieve the core before they could. The system then appears, suggesting that Jin should hand over the core to help it reach level 3. Jin, however, refuses, stating that the core is meant as a gift for a token of apology for using her insignia to enter the mystic realm. He wants to clear his debt to her and be done with the clever girl once and for all. Meanwhile, one of the soldiers reports to the captain that they're detecting another strong aura in the area, indicating the monster isn't dead yet. Jin is stunned, wondering how the monster could have survived the dragon's laser breath attack. The system confirms that, while the attack was powerful, the monster is simply stronger than they thought. Jin prepares to fight the monster again when the captain steps forward. The captain removes his shirt and throws it onto Jin, who instantly recognizes it as the very shirt he had brought with him to the mystic realm. He realizes it must have fallen during the fight with the bear, and the security forces had picked it up. Jin panics, thinking about how his mother will scold him for losing it. Just as the monster prepares to strike again, it laughs menacingly and charges at the captain. But the captain activates his spiritual power, and his body grows significantly larger. With one hand, he grabs the monster's mouth, and with the other, he channels all of his aura into a single devastating attack. In one swift motion, the captain slices the monster into 2 pieces. Jin watches in disbelief as the captain easily defeats the dragon's most powerful moves, including the laser breath, couldn't achieve. He realizes he must be cautious around the security forces, as their strength far surpasses anything he's encountered so far. The security team takes the defeated monster's body and loads it onto a vehicle before driving away. After the security forces leave, Jin and the dragon return to the pit. Jin, looking at the dragon, hands over the leftover bones and tells the dragon it will have to eat them for now. The dragon complains, frustrated that after all the fighting, it's stuck with scraps to eat. Jin remarks that the security forces have taken the monster, so they have no other choice. Jin watches as the dragon begins eating the leftover bones, while he himself starts storing the bones into the monster's space for later use. The system, confused, asks what he's doing. Jin explains that these bones could come in handy in the future. A short while later, we see the pit completely empty by the dragon and Jin, with Jin gaining 30,837 evolution points. He uses these points to upgrade the dragon, who becomes even more powerful, now weighing 10 tons and standing 12 meters tall. Both Jin and the dragon to get back into the back, as they need to leave the mystic realm since they are already running late. However, before they go, Jin decides to do something important. He makes a grave for the monster they defeated. Jin reflects on how the monster, despite being dirty, greedy, and cunning, helped them in 3 significant ways. He dug the pit that allowed them to hide from the security forces. Its core upgraded the system to level 2, and because of it, the security forces were misled, preventing them from discovering Jin's personal dragon. Jin respectfully thanks the monster and hopes its soul finds peace. In the next scene, Jin successfully exits the mystic realm. As he reflects on the night's chaotic events, he looks at Nina's insignia and dreams of one day owning such a powerful item himself, imagining how he would prove his strength to others. But for now, Jin is more worried about how he will handle Nina's questions. He wonders how he'll explain taking her insignia and sneaking into her house, hoping that the monster core will be enough to avoid more difficult questions. Jin messages Nina, and she asks him to meet her at the abandoned school gym. When Jin arrives, he opens the door and asks why they're meeting in such a broken-down place. Nina, furious, reveals that she arranged this meeting to confront him. She accuses Jin of being a pervert who spies on girls while they're bathing, and of stealing her insignia. Jin tries to explain, saying it's all a misunderstanding, but Nina snatches her from him and angrily asks how it ended up with him. She points to the shirt and says it proves that Jin had entered her house. Jin, internally panicking, reflects on how everything spiraled out of control. He had only picked up the shirt to hide the dragon, but it has followed him like evidence everywhere. First with the security forces and now with Nina. Nina declares that she brought him to the gym to teach him a lesson. Jin, realizing he has no choice, apologizes sincerely for using her insignia without permission and offers her the monster core as a token of his apology. However, Nina, still furious, grabs a metal rod and smashes the monster core, shattering it. Jin, shocked and angry, demands to know why she did that. Nina coldly replies that she doesn't want anything from him. She only wants answers. She asks why he was in her house and how he even got there, as she activates her power. All the metal objects in the gym fly toward Jin, warning him that if he tries anything, he'll be in serious. Jin, confused and defensive, insists that all he did was take her insignia. Internally, he wonders if he should involve the system and how to get out of this escalating situation. Jin, in a panic, considers revealing everything about the dragon. But before he can act, the dragon speaks up from inside the bag, insisting that Jin let him out to handle the situation. The small mutated dogs agree with the dragon, but Jin knows this will only make things worse. He reasons that if a fight breaks out between the dragon and Nina, the school could be destroyed in minutes, and the security forces would catch them for sure. Thinking quickly, Jin decides to use his monster projection skill as a distraction and escape. Jin asks the system for the torch, but the system reminds him that since he used the dragon's ability earlier in the day, he can now only use the ability of the mutated dog. Nina, growing impatient, accuses Jin of stalling. Jin quickly flashes the torch into Nina's eyes, temporarily blinding her, and makes a run for it. Nina, unable to see, uses her power to send metal objects flying in Jin's direction. As Jin dodges the attacks, he wonders how things escalated from him just wanting to apologize and return the insignia. Nina, covering her eyes, shouts that Jin is too clever and always knows how to escape trouble. She believes the bullies were justified in how they treated him. Furious, she launches another attack and surrounds Jin, demanding to know who his partner is, and where Jin realizes that Nina isn't angry because of the insignia or the misunderstanding about spying on her. She's focused on getting the dragon to reveal itself. Jin prepares to use the torch on himself to escape, but Nina warns him that the same trick won't work on her twice. She launches a powerful attack, just as Jin uses the mutated dog's ability to dodge and climb onto the roof. However, the roof doesn't open as he expected, and Nina quickly attacks again, knocking him down. She traps Jin in a metal cage and his bag falls to the ground. Inside the bag, the dragon growls, demanding to be let out, eager to eat Nina, with the small dogs agreeing. Nina notices the movement from the bag and realizes that Jin has been talking to it all along. She recalls that Jin didn't have the bag earlier, and it now seems like his partner is inside. Confused, she wonders how something so large could fit in such a small bag, especially considering the huge pitch she saw earlier, which could only have been by a massive monster. As Nina contemplates the mystery, the dragon and dogs, with the system's help, try to wake Jin. In his half-asleep state, Jin mumbles about needing 5 more minutes, confusing the dragon, who scolds him for calling it mom. Jin finally wakes up and notices Nina standing over the bag, panicking. He warns Nina to leave the bag alone, insisting that what's inside is too powerful. If the dragon comes out and fights, the entire school could collapse. Ignoring his warning, Nina declares that she'll open the bag to see for herself. As soon as she does, the dragon and the mutated dogs burst out. The dragon, seeing Nina, licks its lips and hungrily says, "Food." Nina stands frozen, stunned by what she's just unleashed. Now Nina leaps back, face to face with dragon. Lin introduced the creature as a pongu beast that had just reached adulthood. Nina's eyes gleamed with excitement as she adjusted her gloves, clearly impressed by the revelation. Her grin widened as she registered what dragon was indeed a pongu beast. She silently acknowledged the challenge ahead, thrilled by the prospect. Lin, noticing her intent, looked at Nina with caution and exasperation, realizing she might attempt something reckless. Sure enough, Nina leapt into the air, landing gracefully atop a row of steel rods. With a smirk, she mentally affirmed her determination to take on the pongu beast head-on. Eager for the rare opportunity, Lin shook his head slightly, warning her that he wouldn't be responsible for any consequences. But she brushed him off confidently as she began running across the rods in one fluid motion. Nina used her power to bring all the steel rods together, forming a massive hand of connected metal. She was evidently ready to prove herself, presenting this construct as her challenge to Dragon, who eyed the metal hand with curiosity. Lin instructed Dragon that Nina was neither an enemy nor food, reminding him to avoid any explosive breaths or devouring. The dragon, with a glint in his eye, agreed to hold back, if only a little. Nina, feeling slightly underestimated, readied the enormous steel hand and aimed a powerful punch toward the dragon. Dragon effortlessly intercepted her attack, catching the metal construct in his hands. With a single counter move, he destroyed the massive hand, scattering steel rods that rained down around Lin's cage. Just as the steel rods threatened to fall directly onto Lin, Dragon caught them, allowing Lin to slip out of his confinement. Surveying the scene, Lin glanced around, puzzled by Nina's absence. He wondered if she had been caught up in the debris. Searching carefully, he finally spotted her wedged within the basketball wall, while his 3 dogs barked excitedly below her. Trapped and exasperated, Nina shouted at Lin, asking him to get her down and to call off his dogs. Lin, glancing up at her predicament, agreed but had a condition. He reminded her that he had answered her questions and now wanted her to answer his. Gesturing to her badge, he pointed out a familiar picture and asked her about its connection to his father. Caught off guard, Nina's face flushed. A mix of irritation and embarrassment. Half frowning, half blushing, she muttered an accusation, calling Lin a pervert and a gangster for having dared to go through her belongings. Nina's mind drifted into the past, a series of vivid memories flashing before her eyes. She remembered the events from 7 years ago, when the formidable beast known as the Candle Dragon had attacked Tanhai City, bringing devastation in its wake. The creature's onslaught had left half of and in that chaos, Nina's mother had been trapped beneath the rubble. In her memory, young Nina was frantically trying to pull her mother free amidst the destruction surrounding them. With desperation in her voice, she had urged her mother to escape quickly, clutching her hand tightly. But her mother, with a calm resolve, had told her to leave and save herself. Even as young Nina insisted that she would stay by her side, the scene took a terrifying turn as the Candle Dragon loomed closer, opening its massive, menacing jaws. Her mother's plea for young Nina to flee grew urgent, but she, filled with anguish, cried out that she wouldn't leave her, even if it meant they'd faced death together. In that heart-stopping moment, a question raced through her mind. Who could possibly save us? Suddenly, a powerful punch charged with crackling electricity struck the Candle Dragon. The impact radiated across the beast, halting its approach. Shocked and awestruck, young Nina looked up to see the figure of a man standing firmly, the air around him alive with residual sparks. He turned to her, gave a reassuring thumbs up, and smiled confidently. In that moment, Nina's heart swelled with admiration as she gazed at him, realizing the strength of the person who had just saved them. Nina shared with Lin that the man had saved both her and her mother that day. Hearing this, Lin's face lit up, and he threw a joyful punch into the air, filled with pride. He knew then that his father would never have run from danger. He had even managed to strike the mighty Candle Dragon. Lin felt immense pride while Nina admitted that she had always aspired to have a punch like his father's. Reflecting on her recent fight with the young dragon, Nina acknowledged that all her years of training hadn't prepared her for a fully mature strange beast. Although facing a newborn was also very challenging. This remark stirred Dragon's anger while Lin gave a mock scolding expression, raising a finger and telling her to stop using Dragon as her personal practice dummy. Nina, meanwhile, curiously examined the dragon. Amused by the name Dragon and impressed by his imposing appearance, Dragon, none too pleased, grumbled, asking if he might be, which Lin took as a proud show of his dragon spirit. Nina's curiosity continued as she asked Lin where the dragon usually stayed, wondering if Lin housed him at home or perhaps kept him in some other peculiar place. Lin, with a sly grin, hinted vaguely that she might not want to know, but Nina pressed on, playfully offering Dragon an invitation to live with her in her secret realm, where they could train daily with endless space and food. Dragon's eyes sparkled with excitement at the idea, and he eagerly agreed, which prompted Lin to snap, realizing she might be unintentionally convincing him to abandon Lin. With the dragon's cheerful response, Nina added a flustered apology, welcoming Lin along with an embarrassed smile. Lin, now blushing, was taken aback, glancing at her as he stammered, unsure of what she meant. Lin, reflecting on Nina's story, asked what had happened after his father confronted the Candle Dragon. Nina looked somber, explaining that she didn't know. She and her mother had been rescued by others from the Countermeasure Bureau, while Lin's father had continued to face the beast alone. However, her mother's severe injuries proved fatal, and Nina was eventually adopted by her current father. She continued describing how her adoptive father later took her to the Countermeasure Bureau to present a banner in gratitude. It was there she learned Lin's father's name, Lin Longlin. That was also when she first heard the unpleasant rumors about him. Lin's mind raced, thinking through the details of Nina's memories. Something didn't add up. given how many people from the Countermeasure Bureau had witnessed his father's fight with the Candle Dragon. He couldn't understand how those rumors defaming his father had managed to persist and spread. As Nina played with a nearby dog, she noticed Lin's serious expression and snapped him out of his thoughts, reminding him that there was a significant reason she'd called him there that day. She then shared that without knowledge of her uncle's whereabouts, she had returned to her family's ruins in search of answers. In doing so, she had uncovered something unexpected. Nina told Lin about an item, telling him the emblem of that her uncle used to wear, which had sparked her concerns about his possible fate. Lin then asked if she'd found anything else at the scene. As Nina reached into her bag to show him more, a sudden alert came through his system, a notification that the monster radar had detected a suspicious aura nearby. Lin quickly gestured for Nina to hold off, sensing something unusual. The monster radar activated, picking up a faint aura, a small creature roughly the size of a mutated hound. Lin noted how the system had been acting increasingly cautious lately, though this reading caught his attention due to its proximity. When he checked the radar's location indicator, he realized the creature might already be inside the gym. His system confirmed his suspicions. The target was directly behind them, cloaked by invisibility yet visible through the system's detection. The system quickly analyzed the entity, a separated male lineage form, only 25 centimeters in length, but weighing a dense 100 kgs. This hermaphroditic creature's unique biology allowed the male body to detach from its main form, hunt independently, and communicate through spirit energy waves, all while remaining invisible. Lin noticed the dogs barking intently in one direction, clearly sensing the presence of the invisible creature. The evil eye. He smirked, realizing that the dog's keen senses had picked up what he couldn't see. Confident, he commanded them to sniff out the intruder and bring it to him. Nina looked at him, puzzled by his sudden focus on an unseen target. Lin explained that an invisible thief had infiltrated the gym, gesturing for her to watch. As he reflected upon Nina's capability, Lin instructed her to construct 4 open-sided cages in the gym's corners, each 3 meters squared. Although confused, Nina activated her power and began forming the cages as he directed. Lin then turned to the dogs, urging them to drive the evil eye toward the cages. The dogs swiftly cornered the creature, forcing it into one of the enclosures. When Nina shut the cage doors, the dogs continued snapping at the monster, which became partially visible, a grotesque form resembling a surveillance camera. The system quickly analyzed the creature and reported its function. The evil eye wasn't just surveillance in appearance, it communicated with its other half, a main body, using spiritual energy waves. This communication was potent enough to penetrate even the barriers of secret realms. Startled by this revelation, Lin grasped the implications. The monster was being used to spy on them, and suspiciously, it had appeared right as he and Nina had started discussing his father's badge. Lin's expression darkened as he considered the timing. Whoever was controlling this creature had to be after more than a simple observation. He made a mental note of this threat and silently vowed to deal with it. Directing his thoughts toward the unknown observer, he acknowledged the audacity of anyone bold enough to monitor the Monster Lord himself. Nina, however, remained confused about Lin's Monster Lord title. Nina looked down at her phone, her eyes fixed on the photo of the creature she had captured. She murmured to herself, realizing that this evil eye matched an entry from her father's old book on rare beasts, although she had never encountered one alive until now. She had only read about such creatures, but had never come face to face with one until now. Without wasting a moment, she snapped a clear picture and sent it to her father. It didn't take long for her phone to ring. She stepped to the side, lowering her voice as she spoke with a hint of pride. Her father, curious and maybe a bit concerned, asked how she managed to capture it. Nina reassured him, saying there was no need to worry about the details. What she needed most was for him to dig into the creature's origins and learn whatever he could about it. Lin watched her, his gaze drawn to the pendant hanging behind her phone. The sight of it sparked a memory, his father gifting him the similar-looking doll long ago. He recalled himself as a child, puzzled, asking his father why he'd crafted such an odd-looking creature. His father's warm response came to him in fragments, that it was a symbol of strength, bravery, and perseverance meant to remind him to push forward no matter what challenges came his way. Lin felt a deep sense of pride as he reflected on his new title, Monster Lord. This meant he was now stronger than the very creatures he controlled. Determined, he mentally addressed his system, asking how many slots remained in his taming skill. The system responded that with his recent upgrade, he could hold 7 monsters in total and currently had 3 empty slots. Meanwhile, Nina's father explained over the phone that analyzing the creature was far from simple. It required pinpointing and decoding the precise organ responsible for emitting spiritual energy waves. The task was theoretically feasible but immensely challenging, with a slim chance of success. After listening carefully, Nina turned to Lin, relaying her father's advice. Lin only grinned, holding the subdued creature confidently. The evil eye nestled in his arms, strangely compliant, as if sharing in his amusement. He had already tamed it, despite the complexity Nina had described. The monster's wide-eyed look mirrored his own satisfaction. The scene shifts to a laboratory where a strange eye-like creature is being studied. A bird-like humanoid informs the professor that their beast was seized, but its core is missing. The professor dismisses her worry, pointing to an image of a dragon transmitted by the creature before it was captured. Shocked, she realizes the dragon caused their beast's capture in a mystic realm. The professor speculates the forces were after the dragon but stumbled upon the beast. He manipulates the creature, splitting it into smaller entities to track the dragon, but it unexpectedly projects a hologram of Jin. The professor realizes Jin tamed the creature, allowing it to act under his control. Jin accuses them of spying and demands answers. The professor proposes a deal, wanting the dragon's genetic material, and explains his ambition to create a city of monsters, inspired by a similar dragon he studied years ago. The professor explains that he has collected the DNA of thousands of monsters, but none compare to the potential of Jin's dragon. He assures Jin that he only wants the dragon's genes and promises not to harm it. In exchange, he offers valuable information. Jin, noticing the professor's creations use monster cores to emit spiritual energy, asks what information he could provide. The professor reveals that he knows Jin's name and his search for his father. He then drops a shocking revelation. 20 years ago, a dragon disappeared from the island, and Jin's father vanished from the same location at the same time. The professor hints at a connection between Jin's father and the dragon, even noting the resemblance to Jin's current dragon. He proposes an alliance, offering all his gathered information if Jin cooperates. Jin begins to suspect that the dragon, his father, and the system might be linked, tracing back to when he consumed his father's pendant. Before he can respond, Nina interrupts, warning him not to trust the professor. She identifies him as Alexander, a biochemistry and monster technology genius wanted for illegal experiments on humans and monsters. Alexander's reputation for genetic modifications and bioengineering horrifies Nina, but Jin confidently dismisses her concern. He rejects Alexander's offer outright, refusing to work with someone so corrupt. Jin asserts that he doesn't need Alexander's help, knowing he can obtain the information on his own terms. Jin, staring at the screen, commands the evil eye monsters to take the professor's device. Suddenly, the device floats into the air as the monsters obey. Shocked, the professor watches helplessly, questioning how Jin not only hacked one evil eye, but also tamed them all. The bird woman tries to stop the fleeing monsters, yelling that Jin has hijacked the entire group. Unfazed, the professor activates a remote, causing the monsters' heads to malfunction. Jin's tamed evil eye also collapses. Frustrated, Jin demands an explanation, and the professor smugly reveals his mastery over surgical manipulation. By implanting chips in monsters' regenerative cores, he can control their growth, spiritual energy, or even kill them if they disobey. The professor gives Jin an ultimatum: work with him or watch the monster die. He warns that if the monster perishes, their transmission will end. Jin firmly refuses, denouncing the professor's cruel treatment of monsters as mere tools. At that moment, Jin's dragon appears, radiating fury, and demands to know how the professor dared to treat monsters like toys. The professor, astonished, exclaims that this must be the creature he's been searching for over 12 years. He pleads for the dragon to meet him properly, but the enraged dragon dismisses him with a deafening roar. Jin tries to calm the dragon, reminding it that the hologram won't cause any harm. However, chaos erupts in the professor's lab. The dragon's roar, transformed into spiritual waves, shatters containment pods, awakening all the monsters. The lab begins to crumble as the professor watches in awe, declaring this power must belong to the king of monsters. Consumed by obsession, he vows to acquire the dragon's genes at any cost. Suddenly, one of the awakened monsters attacks, slicing the professor in half. As the lab falls apart, Jin watches, realizing the true, unstoppable power of his dragon. The bird woman rushes to save the professor, but his body is already split in two. One half lies near the monsters, while the other half is carried away by the bird woman. Jin, horrified by the scene, is pulled back by Nina, who covers his eyes and tells him not to look. At the same moment, the female evil eye monster dies, cutting off Jin's connection to the lab. A surviving male evil eye monster escapes with the information device. The bird woman asks if she should pursue it, but the professor, still alive despite his injuries, tells her not to bother, hinting at a backup plan. As they survey the ruined lab, insect-like creatures crawl toward the professor, merging his two halves together and regenerating his body. The bird woman worries about the boy obtaining the device, but the professor reassures her that the device held little critical information. If Jin wants more, he'll have to return. The professor dismisses the loss of the lab's monsters, deeming them insignificant compared to the dragon. The scene shifts to Jin's school, where his dragon has collapsed. Worried, Jin consults the system and sees a low battery warning, wondering if the dragon needs to be recharged with electricity. Panicking, he tells Nina that the dragon's condition worsened after the mysterious call, and suspects the professor might have caused it. Nina calmly dismisses the idea, explaining that the dragon is suffering from spiritual suffocation. Jin, confused, attempts CPR, but Nina stops him, clarifying that it's not a breathing issue. She explains that on Blue Planet, spiritual energy is unstable and scarce. When a being like the dragon, composed of 70% spiritual energy, overuses it, they experience symptoms of deficiency, akin to suffocation. Nina warns Jin that the dragon will need to recover its spiritual energy naturally or risk further complications. Without proper replenishment, even simple activities become difficult for the dragon. Nina explains that the dragon's earlier war consumed an immense amount of spiritual energy, almost like a suicide mission. However, she reassures Jin, revealing that she has a potion to restore the dragon's condition. Jin thanks her and gives the potion to the dragon, which gradually starts to recover. As the dragon stabilizes, the gate opens and another evil eye monster enters, carrying the information device. Jin notices there are only 3 monsters left, suspecting that the bird woman likely killed the female and male evil eye monsters. Nina hands the device to Jin, but to her shock, he destroys it on the spot. Confused, Nina asks why he would do that and if he doesn't want to solve the mystery of his father's disappearance. Jin explains that the professor could have easily captured the monsters, but allowed them to escape, hinting at a deeper conspiracy. He believes relying on the device would only bring more trouble and declares that he will uncover the truth through his own strength. Nina, observing him, realizes how much he has changed. The boy who was once bullied has now grown into someone confident and powerful. Nina hands Jin a poster, and he asks why her picture is on it. She explains that it's for a club, adding that Jin can't just sneak into the mystic realm without proper preparation. She informs him that the exam for entry is next month, giving him time to train. Jin considers the idea, thinking it might be helpful, but reminds himself that he's still not awakened. Suddenly, the dragon lifts Jin from behind, confidently declaring that Jin will take the exam and promising to prepare him. Jin protests, insisting it's not that simple, but the dragon reassures him, boldly stating that anyone who stands in their way will be defeated. As they talk, strange smoke begins emanating from the dragon's body, alarming everyone. Jin, concerned, tells the dragon to sit while he fetches water and asks Nina what's happening. Nina calmly explains that the medicine is working, and the dragon will be fine soon. To their surprise, the dragon begins to shrink, reverting to a smaller form. 2 months passed peacefully. Under the bright sun, Lin suddenly screamed in frustration. He anxiously remembered that today was the day the results for the Elite Hunter Qualification Exam, Subject 1, would be released. Turning to Dragon, Lin asked if there had been any update or phone call about the results. But Dragon, sitting on the bed with a phone in hand, didn't respond. Lin called out again in frustration, only to notice some books spread out nearby. He finally realized Dragon had already checked earlier that morning. Lin asked Dragon to lend him the phone, saying he needed to check some important information. Dragon mumbled that checking information was important but clearly seemed nervous. Lin wondered if Dragon was still obsessing over the island of Extreme Abyss after all this time. Dragon declared he had no choice, He tightened his grip and focused, as if about to do something critical. Lin questioned what Dragon had really discovered. Furious, he shouted after seeing the screen Dragon had been playing games all along instead of checking results. He watched the game closely, analyzing Dragon's move. He predicted that if Dragon launched the attack from that position, it wouldn't end well. Just as expected, the opponent was instantly defeated in a single hit. Lin, observing the screen, commented dryly that it was a predictable loss. Fuming, Lin yelled that this was already the 26th time Dragon had lost. He was furious upon realizing that Dragon had wasted the entire morning playing games again. As Lin shouted, Dragon roared in frustration and shot flames at the phone. Lin tried to calm him, saying he understood the loss but warned not to destroy the phone out of anger. Dragon proudly claimed he was testing the full power of Burst Puff in a simulated battle. Lin glared at him, calling it an obvious excuse to keep playing games. Fed up, Lin demanded his phone back and lunged at Dragon. Just then, the door slammed open with a loud bang. Lin's mom stormed in furious. She scolded Lin for bullying Dragon. Embarrassed, Lin asked if she could at least knock before entering next time. Lin's mom bluntly told him she wasn't there to see him. Ignoring Lin, she cheerfully handed Dragon a massive plate of freshly grilled kebabs. Lin watched in disbelief as Dragon accepted them with joy. Frustrated, Lin questioned why his mom favored Dragon, pointing out that he hadn't eaten either. She casually reminded him that Dragon needed to eat well for a growing body. When Lin asked about lunch, she coldly replied there were leftovers and offered to microwave them for him, sipping her drink nonchalantly while brushing off his complaint. Lin sat with a toasted piece of bread. He complained about having to eat leftovers while Dragon enjoyed freshly grilled meat. His mom responded by saying Dragon studied hard every day, unlike Lin who stayed in bed. Still chewing, pointed out that Dragon had been playing games all morning. His mom refused to believe him and accused Lin of being lazy and making false claims. Dragon, now calmly reading a monster study book, appeared innocent and hardworking. Lin was stunned by how closely the two were defending each other, feeling left out. He recalled his past worries about whether she would accept Dragon. Now, he sarcastically realized that he was the one who felt like the adopted son. Lin's mom shifted the conversation and asked him directly about the test results. She didn't let him play the victim and demanded a clear answer. Lin replied that the results hadn't come yet. He was supposed to receive a call in the morning, but it was already late, and no one had contacted him. Lin's mom reminded him how she supported his decision to take the test, even using their family's savings meant for his future marriage. She warned that if he failed, he'd stay single forever. Suddenly, Nina kicked open the door and burst in, shouting that the results for Subject 1 had been released. She explained she'd been calling all morning, but got no response, so she rushed over in person. Lin looked at Dragon suspiciously and guessed he must have declined the call. Dragon tried to play innocent, but his awkward expression gave him away. Dragon shrugged it off, blaming Lin for the delay. He smugly claimed it wasn't his fault, acting like the situation had nothing to do with him. Lin flashed back to when Dragon promised to support him during the test. He was genuinely touched back then, but now, feeling betrayed, he regretted believing he could rely on him. Lin snapped, calling Dragon a liar while his mom scolded him for acting out in front of a guest. Nina stood awkwardly by the door, hearing the yelling from inside. She hesitantly asked if she had come at a bad time. Lin's mom grabbed both Lin and Dragon by the collars, dragging them out effortlessly. She declared it was easy dealing with both of them. Recognizing Nina, Lin's mom greeted her warmly, recalling her from the school's parent-teacher conferences where she often gave speeches. Nina laughed and greeted Lin's mom, joking about her not going to the kebab shop today. Lin's mom explained she skipped work because she was too eager to hear the test results. She told Nina that she had spent all her savings so Lin could take the test, and now she was anxious to know how he did. Nina smiled and shared the good news Lin had ranked first in Subject 1. Overjoyed, Lin's mom burst into laughter, praising her son proudly. She began imagining what his future success might mean, slapping his back in excitement. While she celebrated, Nina asked if that meant Lin would surely get recruited. Lin quietly observed everyone's reactions, noticing how oddly quiet things had gotten despite the good news. Nina explained that Subject 1 was just a written test covering basic knowledge of secret realms and monsters. She added that the real challenge would begin with the next 2 tests. She continued that Subject 2 was a physical test with a very low pass rate under 10%. Subject 3, a combat test with unpredictable content, sometimes had a 0% success rate. Hearing all this, Lin's mom looked concerned. But Lin reassured her confidently, saying he would definitely pass all the remaining tests. He admitted he didn't have awakened powers yet but believed in his other strengths. This time, unlike the awakening ceremony, he would prepare thoroughly and give it his all. Nina revealed the reason she came in person. She hoped Lin Xiu could stay at her place for 1 month of special training to prepare for the upcoming tests. Lin and his mom were shocked by the sudden request. Lin stuttered, asking for time to pack, but Nina confidently replied she had everything ready at her place. Lin's mom reluctantly accepted the idea, saying she respected her grown son's independence. Still, she looked disappointed, holding a food cover in her hand. She had secretly prepared a surprise celebration meal. Now, with Lin suddenly leaving, she was left to enjoy the food alone. Lin's mom sat full and satisfied after finishing the meal she had prepared. She realized Lin had planned everything carefully from the test to the celebration and felt impressed by his foresight. Meanwhile, Lin was confused when Nina brought him to a large modern building instead of her house. He nervously asked where they actually were. Nina pointed to her home, the famous research center. Lin was stunned to learn that she lived there and wondered if she was related to the renowned Dr. Su Tianchai. Nina clarified that her actual home was within a secret realm hidden under the research center's parking lot. Lin was shocked. He couldn't believe she literally lived inside a secret realm. She explained that her father devoted all his time to monster research, which made living in a secret realm more convenient for things like behavioral, physiological, and biochemical studies. Lin was confused at first, but Nina clarified that secret realms could actually be contracted by individuals. She found it more practical to stay there due to her family's research needs. She went on to explain that all nations follow a first-come, first-served system for unexplored secret realms. In their country, only elite hunters are allowed to explore and develop them. Since managing secret realms takes immense resources, elite hunters often rent out safe ones. For example, the 86 realm Lin visited was rented to train blood condensation cultivators, as long as the tenant was an elite hunter. Nina explained that once Lin passed the qualification test for elite hunters, he'd be eligible to apply for his own secret realm. This news caught Lin completely off guard. Shocked, Lin imagined the possibilities having his own realm where he could keep dragon, little pets, and even large beasts. It felt like a dream for a future monster master. The group arrived at a sleek research facility. Lin wondered aloud if it felt strange to walk through an office just to get home. Nina calmly replied there was another private entrance. Meanwhile, Lin looked around the peaceful landscape inside and thought this was the kind of life a true monster master deserved. Nina led Lin to Monster Treatment Room, explaining they were only there to pick up a friend. Inside, she informed them that after 2 months of recovery, the monster's wicked eye had completely healed and was ready to be taken home. Overjoyed, Lin asking if she had come back to life. Lin realized the creature wasn't Big Eye's mother after all. Instead, it was Big Eye number 1 as he guessed correctly. The monster nodded to confirm. He noticed that number 2 and number 3 were also present and surprisingly managed to distinguish them. Nina was amazed, wondering how he could even tell them apart. Lin asked Nina how Big Eye number 1 ended up being called Big Eye's mother. She explained that the so-called male part is actually a detached hunting organ that can act on its own. When the female is seriously injured, one of the males will transform into a new female, forming a complete wicked eye. Lin suddenly understood why touching one had tamed the entire group instantly. Lin recalled the moment he vowed to protect monsters and felt embarrassed, realizing he looked dramatic. Nina teased him, saying he looked cool back then. Despite everything, Lin smiled and declared it a happy ending. He looked around the room, relieved to see all the monsters safe and well. Nina told him to wait as she needed to make a phone call. Meanwhile, Lin turned to Big Eye and commanded it to get in the bag. As Lin packed up, Dragon looked at the creature beside him and praised it, calling it a cute monster. As Lin turned around, the girl excitedly asked if Lin was one of the awakened. She admired his adorable monster. calling it cool and expressing how lucky she felt to meet someone like him. With a bright smile, she politely asked if they could shake hands, calling it a rare opportunity. Both of them stood speechless. Lin was still wondering where this girl even came from. The girl beamed with excitement after shaking Dragon's hand, saying she had never shaken hands with a monster before. She declared she wouldn't wash her hand for half a month. Dragon, taken aback, reached out gently to complete the handshake. As the handshake ended, Dragon froze in shock, overwhelmed by the unexpected level of admiration from the little girl. Lin noticed Dragon sweating and asked what was wrong. Surprised, Lin wondered if it was some kind of ability. The girl smiled and modestly said it was just a small trick. She revealed it was called the 8-Kai Fist, a martial technique that uses the opponent's strength against them by redirecting force. She calmly explained that the more power Dragon used to break free, the more his own body would suffer. Dragon gritted his teeth and groaned that it felt incredibly heavy. The girl turned slightly, giving a confident smirk. Dragon's eye widened as he suddenly felt an even greater force build up. In the next moment, his body was slammed against the wall. With a loud bang, the girl effortlessly slammed the monster to the ground, mocking how it felt to be thrown by her own strength. Lin was stunned. Even though Qiulong was weakened from Su Lingyu's medicine, he was still a powerful monster. He boy couldn't believe he got thrown so easily. Dragon, furious, leapt to strike back, shouting that such tricks wouldn't work again. But she stood calmly and dodged, saying she wasn't that naive. She added with a sly smile that his master was too close, so she had to create a gap to step in. The girl swiftly pulled out a strange spherical device glowing with energy. With precise timing, she launched the ball at Dragon, triggering a burst of smoke. Dragon roared in frustration as he vanished into the thick fog, as a blade suddenly clashed against him. She calmly explained that most awakened fighters use flashy techniques to impress, but even a simple fruit knife can be deadly if used right. She pointed out that fighting isn't a magic show, there's no need for overly dramatic or deceptive moves. With the blade now at his throat, she smirked confidently, warning that when people feel truly threatened, instinct takes over, and demanded he hand it over. Lin nervously demanded to know who she was, shocked by how easily she disarmed him and turned the situation around. She confidently replied that if she wanted to kill him, she could have done it 4 times already. With a smile, she finally introduced herself as Fang Tianji, the coach sent by Sister Nina to oversee his special training. She also hinted he relied too much on external tools. Nina comically shouted that she wasn't a sister at all, she was 7 years older and needed to stop acting cute. She handed the device back to him, teasing him by calling him a good boy. Nina steps forward, acknowledging there's no need for introductions as everyone already seems familiar. Nina introduces the girl to Lin, explaining that she's the coach. His name is Tian, she hired to help him prepare for the upcoming test. The woman confidently smirks as she stands beside Lin. Nina casually mentions that this coach has attempted the Elite Hunter's qualification test 10 times, calling her highly experienced. Lin is caught off guard by this and comments on how it sounds like she failed all 10 times, which visibly irritates the coach. The coach yells in frustration, denying any failure and insisting she only took the test repeatedly to gain experience and increase her strength. Lin looks skeptical as she tries to defend herself passionately. Tian questions if Lin is really the promising candidate Nina mentioned. She bluntly criticizes him, saying he lacks ability, reflexes, and combat experience. Tian mocks him further, calling it a waste of money to even attempt the test. Dragon roars loudly in anger, reacting to Tian's insult toward Lin. Tian smirks confidently, teasing Dragon by asking if it wants a rematch. As Dragon moves in aggressively, Lin tries to keep it calm. Meanwhile, Tian hides behind him, while Lin sarcastically questions Nina if this is really the coach she chose. Nina finally loses her patience and sternly tells both Lin and Tian to stop arguing. Despite her warning, Tian gets scolded for goofing around, and Lin gets annoyed when she calls him sister. Nina angrily reminds Tian she was hired for a serious job, not to mess around. Tian complains that Lin is too weak and says she's no longer interested in training him. Lin fires back, saying he doesn't want a coach who failed 10 times. Nina can't believe how childish they're acting. Nina suggests a bet to settle things. Confidently, she reveals that she came prepared, while Dragon sniffs her bag curiously. Nina proposes a challenge. If Tian can make Lin surrender, she'll be rewarded. Nina reveals a shining bag filled with valuable monster crystals as the prize. Tian's eyes light up with excitement. Overwhelmed by greed, she eagerly declares that she wants the prize, already dreaming of victory. Tian playfully teases Nina for placing such a big bet on Lin, while Lin himself seems surprised. Nina reminds Lin that what goes around comes around and points out that the crystal he's holding is the one he retrieved from the 86th secret realm. Tian inspects the crystal, confused about its worth since it appears damaged. She questions whether it still holds value in its current state. Nina explains that during the Age of Nirvana, monster crystals were as important as coal or fuel, used to power weapons, vehicles, and machines. The value depends on purity, not size. Lin asks if Nina smashed the crystal because she already knew this. Nina calmly responds that since she gave it away, she had the right to do whatever she wanted with it. Nina raises the stakes by saying that if Tian can't make Lin surrender, she must prepare a full, detailed training plan for him. Tian suspiciously asks if Dragon will be involved in the challenge. Nina quickly assures her that Dragon won't interfere. Tian only needs to make Lin surrender. Tian smirks, accusing Nina of favoring Lin too much. Lin stands silently, while Tian complains that if Lin acts stubborn and refuses to surrender, she won't be able to do anything about it anyway. To balance things, Tian reveals she's taken Lin's power-enhancing tool. She proposes that if Lin can retrieve it no matter what she does, he'll be declared the winner. Lin carefully observes Tian and realizes she's so powerful that she could even lift and throw Dragon. He admits that with his current speed and strength, getting close to her seems impossible. Enraged, Dragon roars and declares he'll fight on Lin's behalf. But Nina quickly steps in and firmly stops Dragon from interfering. Nina clearly states that everyone can be part of the challenge except Dragon. Lin realizes that Dragon being banned from the match must be Nina's way of sending him a deeper message. Still confident he has more monsters in his bag even without Dragon. Nina jokes about Lin's strange behavior, asking if he's always this silly. Tian casually confirms it, calling it his unique way of thinking. Energized, Lin throws down his bag and confidently declares that he's ready. Tian smirks while drawing a baton. She mocks Lin, saying she doesn't need a knife to beat him and dismisses the need for self-defense tactics. She's more than capable without them. Tian slips the enhancement tool into her coat pocket. As she braces herself, Lin suddenly charges forward with full force. He shouts and hurls his backpack straight at her face. She effortlessly dodges and mocks Lin's move, calling it a lame trick. Tian confidently blocks Lin's incoming attack, easily deflecting him mid-air while gripping her baton tightly. The backpack Lin threw earlier spins in the air. Tian mockingly scolds Lin, saying that a basic move like that won't work on her, no matter how many times he tries it. But suddenly, she looks around in confusion. Lin has vanished. She's caught off guard and wonders where he disappeared to. Tian's grip tightens on the backpack as it suddenly begins to shake. Out of nowhere, 3 small dogs leap from the bag. Shocked, Tian questions why there are dogs inside. Despite being caught off guard, she quickly regains composure and counters the ambush. She refuses to be taken down by a few surprise monsters. Meanwhile, Lin suddenly appears from within the bag, grinning confidently. He reveals this was his plan all along, and now that she's distracted, it's finally his moment to strike. Shocked, Tian yells at him, completely baffled at how he managed to squeeze into the bag in the first place. With a final push, Lin successfully snatches the projector from Tian's hand and shouts in triumph he got it. Lin leaps back triumphantly, holding the projector in hand. Tian furiously yells at him, outraged that he tricked her. She lunges forward, trying to snatch it back, but Lin swiftly reacts. With a confident smirk, Lin presses the button on the projector mid-air. Tian's eyes widen in shock. A burst of energy erupts from Lin the moment he activates the projector, sending a glowing wave through the room as Tian holds her ground. Tian shields her eyes from the blinding light. Lin, now powered up and surrounded by red lightning, leaps high into the air, preparing a surprise strike from above. In a rapid motion, he slams down onto Tian, catching her completely off guard and pinning her to the ground with force. Lin sits proudly atop Tian, declaring his victory with a grin and saying he's won the bet. Tian reflects silently, admitting to herself that Lin's tactics and reflexes under pressure were surprisingly impressive. Lin keeps talking non-stop, boasting that he's not someone who can be intimidated by a knife. He even brags that not even mutant dogs could pierce his scale armor. Still pinned down, Tian smirks and calmly questions whether just transforming is enough to give him that much confidence. Tian suddenly strikes Lin with a brutal counterattack, catching him off guard and cracking him between the legs with a vicious move. Lin's face contorts in agony, completely frozen as the pain overwhelms him. Holding himself in pain, Lin yells that she's killing him while Tian presses her advantage. With a mischievous grin, Tian splashes something on him and declares he should now taste the power of pepper, adding insult to injury. Lin stumbles away in pain, clutching his face and groaning from Tian's pepper attack. He curses her and swears revenge, while she laughs mischievously behind him. Angrily, Lin shouts again and clenches his fists, determined to fight back harder this time. With renewed energy, Lin dashes forward, yelling that he's going to show her what he's really capable of. Tian stands firm and calmly reveals the truth. Sister Nina didn't just hire her to coach. She explains that she's not awakened either, just like him. Shocked, Lin yells in disbelief upon learning Tian isn't awakened either. His punch halts just inches from her face. The impact of his stopped attack causes a massive shockwave that explodes into the wall behind her, leaving a deep crater. Tian smiles calmly as she leans against the broken wall, Lin frustrated that she didn't reveal it earlier. Tian casually replies that it's fine, she dodged it anyway, so no harm done. Nina watches closely and is surprised by the power Lin just unleashed, noting it silently in awe. She compares his strike to one she threw before, realizing his punch is nearly equal in strength, on par with an astral projection realm strike. Meanwhile, Lin's fist remains clenched. Tian smirks at Lin and mocks him for shaking, asking if he's scared just because she isn't one of the awakened. She teases further, saying that a punch like his would shatter a normal person completely, implying she shouldn't survive it. Lin confidently shouts that she's wrong, which makes Tian momentarily impressed and curious about his claim. But Lin quickly clarifies he meant that even most awakened fighters wouldn't survive that punch either. Tian coughs awkwardly while Lin looks confused by her reaction. Tian questions Lin's surprise and reminds him how even a simple fruit knife can be threatening. She points out that awakened ones may be strong, but they still bleed. Lin looks stunned, clenching his fist tightly, realizing that he can't risk hitting anyone carelessly with that much power. He lowers his head in frustration. Meanwhile, Tian watches calmly and decides it's time to be honest with him. She reveals that since he showed his true strength, she won't hide anything either. She's part of the elite hunters and, as promised, will now start his special training plan. Nina laughs and says she thought he'd failed the qualification test 10 times. She adds that Tian is actually an examiner. They ride a cable car through the forest. Inside, Tian and the dragon beside her look out the window, amazed by the view. Nina tells Tian not to act so curious since it's not his first visit. Meanwhile, Lin politely asks if he can ask her something. She turns to him and asks in return if he's truly not one of the awakened, questioning his identity directly. Tian assures them she has no special ability and is not awakened. She confidently says her training plan will help pass the elite hunter's qualification test. She explains the test is split into 3 subjects: written, physical, and combat. Anyone can qualify if their combined score meets the standard, and none of the tests require a special ability. Lin asks why even the awakened struggle to get the elite hunter's badge. She replies it's because of the 3rd subject, combat. She adds that although they only recruit 10 people each year, hundreds apply. Most of them are awakened, making the combat test elimination extremely cruel. Lin is worried the combat test might be hard since it changes every year, but Tian says passing it guarantees selection. She explains the test always focuses on elimination. If they use a power-enhancing tool to eliminate others early, they'll be fine. Nina realizes that with Lin's strength, eliminating the other candidates within 15 minutes should be easy. But Tian says it won't be that simple for him. She smirks and says to ask if he even dares to hit others with that powerful fist. Lin gathers courage and says he's willing to do what it takes to join the elite hunters. Tian presses him to clarify, but he stays silent, unsure how to answer. She kneels beside him and says fighting against his heart will only interfere with his combat plan, so he doesn't need to force himself to hit anyone with that fist. She smiles, explaining the goal of their special training is to find a way to defeat opponents without seriously hurting them, just enough to take away their combat power. Lin suddenly hears a cracking sound. A warning alert flashes before Lin's eyes. It reports a strong primordial Kai reaction detected near him, alarming him instantly. Lin turns to the group with urgency, explaining that something with powerful primordial Kai is quickly approaching. As a giant bird flies overhead, Tian laughs, joking that they wouldn't be able to run if a monster attacked midair. Lin and Nina scream in panic. While Lin scolds her for joking about something so serious, Nina calmly assures them that the cable car is completely safe despite the realm being classified as sea level. She explains that it has ultrasonic devices on both sides to repel flying monsters. She suggests the detected signal might just be a watch crayfish in the lake below. Lin peeks down, surprised that such a crayfish exists and guards this area. He spots the giant creature in the water and calls it extraordinary, then mutters that it probably tastes really good too. Lin is shocked as he imagines Dragon eating a huge crayfish. He yells at Dragon, asking how he could even think of eating something like that. Both of them drool at the thought of a deliciously cooked crayfish dish, completely lost in their food fantasy. Dragon's eyes sparkle with hunger as he shouts that he wants it, his excitement growing uncontrollably. Suddenly, Dragon lets out a powerful roar. Red energy bursts around him, and Lin and the others brace themselves, startled by the sudden transformation. Nina urgently tells Lin to stop Dragon. She explains that he's overly excited and is uncontrollably absorbing primordial Kai from the air. She fears what might happen if it continues. Meanwhile, Dragon starts to swell, and Tian laughs at how fun it looks. Lin panics, wondering why the medicine isn't working anymore, but Nina explains that in this secret realm, the Kai is too abundant. She clarifies that even though the medicine can compress the Kai, Dragon excitement makes him absorb it endlessly. Lin realizes that if this goes on, the cable car could collapse from the overload. Nina blames Lin for mentioning food in front of a foodie. As the cable car shakes and Dragon continues shouting, Tian admires his balloon form, calling it cool. Nina worries aloud, calculating that the cable car's capacity is for 6 people, but Dragon now weighs nearly 6 tons. Lin confirms the number, realizing it's nearly 20 times the limit. The cable mechanism starts to separate under the pressure, unable to support the extreme weight. With a loud snap, the cable car begins to fall. Panic spreads as everyone realizes what's happening. The group screams in fear. Nina suggests they might survive if Dragon were gone, while Lin nervously remarks that the fall feels like a turbo drop ride. As the cable car plummets, Dragon roars and jumps out, releasing his energy mid-air. In a swift move, he catches the falling cable car and slows its descent using his power. The cable car safely hits the water with a splash, surrounded by glowing energy that cushions the impact. Inside, everyone breathes a sigh of relief, thinking they're safe. But Nina quickly warns them not to celebrate yet, hinting that more trouble might be coming. Lin shouts in frustration that the cable car isn't a boat, as water starts flooding the cabin. He's shocked to see it's already knee-deep, while Tian points out the fish and crabs swimming inside. Nina tells them to hurry. She activates her power to steady the cabin and urges the others to get out first. Lin helps her climb onto the roof as they all evacuate. He calls everyone to move quickly before it's too late. Now standing on top of the sinking cabin, the group watches silently as the car begins to submerge deeper into the water. Lin turns around and finds himself face to face with a giant blue lobster. The lobster mutters the word spicy, seemingly interested in them as food. Lin identifies it as a huge lobster, while scanning confirms it's a deep-sea mutated species. The creature lunges forward, causing Lin and Tian to be thrown back. As the monster closes in, Nina uses her powers to shield the cable car, creating a glowing energy barrier against the attack. Lin watches in shock as the giant lobster crushes the cable car's shell with its claws, realizing the strength of its pinching force is enough to break through solid metal. As Nina floats in the water unprotected, Lin panics, recognizing she's now fully exposed to danger. Nina hesitates but ultimately decides she has no choice. She prepares to unleash a powerful technique she was hoping to avoid, activating Project Little Militant Dog. As she launches the attack, the others watch in surprise. Lin and Tian help each other up while wondering if the summoned creature is really that thing. As the situation intensifies, Tian pulls Nina up and yells at her to stop talking. They need to move immediately. The group quickly mounts the summoned dogs. Tian shouts that they need to run as the mutated lobster looms in the background. As they race across the terrain, creatures begin to close in. One of the creatures flies directly toward Lin, making a loud warning noise. As the group escapes on the creature, a massive tail splashes near them. Beneath the surface, the giant blue lobster shifts its position. The lobster releases gurgling bubbles as it charges energy in its mouth. In a flash, it fires a powerful water beam upward with a loud boom. As the water cannon blasts toward them, Nina urgently yells for everyone to dive underwater. Tian is amazed by the Lobster King's power, and Lin panics as it gets closer. Without hesitation, the group submerges together, narrowly avoiding the incoming attack. They swim deeper, staying tightly grouped, as the massive shadow of the Lobster King looms behind them. Nina turns back and signals the others to look. The group swims straight into the massive open mouth of a dragon. As they're drawn closer to the dragon jaws, someone warns them not to move. Lin suddenly hears a familiar voice and realizes it's Dragon. Shocked, he wonders where Dragon is while trying to stay still. Before they can react, they're all swallowed whole, screaming in panic as they vanish into the dragon mouth. Dragon activates his ability to drain the water. Meanwhile, at Nina's house, her father waits silently in the living room, checking the time. A flashback shows Nina earlier, cheerfully asking her father for permission to bring 2 classmates over for special training. Back in the present, her father looks at his watch and remarks that although they were supposed to arrive by noon, it's already almost evening. As the sun sets over the mountains, Su Chenkai's father looks out toward the cable lines. He wonders aloud if something has gone wrong. Beneath one of the support towers, a large shadow cuts through the water. With a loud splash, Dragon emerges from the water near the tower. Inside Dragon Mouth, Lin, Nina, Tian tumble out, gasping for air. Tian complains she couldn't breathe inside, relieved to be out. Tian helps Nina climb out of Dragon Mouth, urging her to come up quickly as they all try to recover. Nina catches her breath and tells Lin to take the lead and get everyone to safety. As they prepare to leave, Lin turns and is shocked to see Tian suddenly removing her clothes. Tian calmly explains that since they're in a crisis, she wants to travel light. As Tian drops her coat, a pile of weapons clatters to the ground, including a mace, dagger, gun, and other gear. Lin is shocked by how heavily armed she's been this whole time. Tian casually explains they're just small tools for self-defense, listing items like a dagger, barrel gun, blow gun, and poison. Suddenly, a loud roar warns them of incoming danger. Dragon yells for everyone to run immediately. With no time to spare, Tian, Nina, and Lin grab onto the structure above the water as a powerful wave crashes below them. Dragon shouts up to the group clinging to the tower, telling them they did well and to leave the rest to him. With a powerful roar, he grabs the attention of the blue lobster, who turns toward the splash Dragon caused. The lobster responds by charging aggressively, splashing through the water with speed and power. As the whirlpool intensifies, the lobster are pulled into the swirling current. The compound eyes of arthropods offer wide vision, but lack the clarity of vertebrate eyes, setting up a key advantage. With a powerful roar, Dragon launches a surprise attack and slams into the lobster from above. Dragon bites down on the lobster's shell with all his strength, but struggles as the tough armor resists cracking. He suddenly remembers the delicious crayfish dish he imagined earlier. Lin silently scolds him, realizing his hunger is distracting him mid-fight. With renewed determination, Dragon charges up his energy. Red lightning begins to spark around him as his power surges. Unleashing a massive energy beam, Dragon fires directly into the sky. The lobster is launched upward in a fiery explosion, completely overwhelmed by the attack. The massive lobster, burned and broken, crashes back down toward the earth after being blasted high into the air. It slams into the ground with a heavy thud, its body scorched and motionless. The group sit atop Dragon Head, relieved. Lin praises the effectiveness of Dragon Burst Puff, noting how one shot ended it. Dragon back to normal, calmly says he's hungry. Lin happily adds that his thoughts are clearer now and the smell is amazing. Dragon sniffs the air and follows the scent, declaring that the smell is coming from nearby. He spots the roasted lobster lying on the ground. They cheer in excitement with shining eyes, amazed by the sight and smell. As they approach the lobster, Dragon expresses concern the shell is too tough. He wonders how they're supposed to eat it. Lin confidently steps forward and claims he's an expert at eating crayfish, bragging that he's eaten at least 8,000, if not 10,000. He swiftly begins slicing, and large chunks of lobster shell fly into the air. With a proud grin, he presents the neatly cut lobster meat on a giant leaf. Qiulong takes a bite and happily exclaims that the lobster tastes amazing, while the group sits nearby enjoying the feast. Tian eats quietly, then hesitates as a memory flashes back. She had once suggested an idea to help Lin pass his test quickly using electricity instead of fists. She had explained that by channeling electricity, he could paralyze opponents instantly without hurting them, and the little girl added that it would be just like his father's Thunderbolt Iron Fist. Hearing this, Lin looks at his hand and realizes the similarity, thinking to himself that it feels exactly like his father's power.
This is the end of the video. If you guys want to see the next part, then don't forget to subscribe and like the video.